So in essence, the belief is that the stupid left calls it the reproductive right, and it's their body to do what they want of it. But the truth is that baby has a different DNA structure than the biological mother and the biological father. Therefore, it's a separate entity. It's not a reproductive right. It's a child. It's a separate child being developed in your womb. And to murder this child that has a independent DNA structure than you and the biological father is murder. Period. And we in America are a Christian country, and that means that everybody is born in the image and likeness of God. Therefore, every human being has intrinsic value. So when a child is in the womb developing, that child has intrinsic value, and to murder that goes against all good morals and ethics and Christian ethics. It's a violation. It's murder. It's terrible. And these leftists are disgusting people. Period. Welcome to Alliance Against Communism. Stopping anti-Western subversion. Stopping Marxism. Stopping wokeism. Stopping radical gender ideology. Stopping foreign and domestic enemies of the United States of America. Stopping critical race theory. The fight is on. We are not going to stand for this Marxist attack on this country. We are going to resist. We are going to fight back. You are not going to make us bow down. We will not submit. Our rights and responsibilities come from God. We bow down to nothing and to nobody but God himself. All right, welcome to AAC. This is Christopher Ross. I'm here with Eric Willis. And we are doing our episode 12, which is the end of season 1. I'm very glad that we got this far. To finish a whole season of podcasts is a very good feeling. We're staying disciplined, and we are trying to piss as many liberals off as possible, and it's great.
That is exactly right.
So this this podcast, we're going to be doing 3 things. We're going to be doing a podcast on Roe versus Wade. We're going to be doing a podcast on these gun laws, these red flag gun laws, and we're going to be doing the podcast on gay marriage, and I hope these literally boil the blood of every leftist on this earth. So we're going to start with Roe versus Wade, and if Eric wants to say anything before we start, this is your time right now.
No, I think you basically covered it. I just want to thank everybody for listening. I appreciate our dear listeners, and continue the support. We greatly appreciate it.
And we're about to go out. We completed our first flyer, and we're about to go out to actual political events to spread the word and to grow AAC. And we're going to be doing that very, very soon. It's going to be a great thing because being an internet warrior is pretty cool. But we want to deal with people face to face, and we want to get
on the ground.
Yeah, boots on the ground. That's what we want to do, and we're about to do that soon. But anyway, getting into Roe versus Wade. Okay, so basically I'm going to go over a few statistics so that we can kind of get a view of how abortion has been dealt with in the United States, how it's being looked at, and how it's differing. And if we have a good view of statistics, that can give us a good view of what's going on in reality. Part of being realized is to basically accept reality for what it is, and it is what it is. Sometimes it's very ugly, and we just got to accept the truth. So according to the CDC, which issues a report from the state agencies. They calculate the annual abortion rate, and it's about, in 2019, there was about 898,000 abortions that occurred in 2019. Further, the Guttmacher Institute calculates its annual abortion total by contacting abortion providers across the country. It uses the data to provide it uses the data from providers that to choose and participate the estimate for the results. So, I'm sorry, that kind of sounds weird, but let's just go. They say it's around 862,320 that took place in 2017. So
See,
it looks like
my statistics are a little bit different.
What does yours say?
Well, what I found was obviously they kind of hide information. They'll give you some, but they won't give it all. What I found was that about 3,000 abortions every single day in the United States, and if you do the calculations, that's around 1 million children every single year.
So basically, it looks like, based on yours and mine, it looks like we're aborting between 500,000 and 1 million babies a year.
I would say in between, like you're saying, in between like 800,000 and 1 million.
Okay, gotcha. So that's kind of a
I mean, if we're wrong, if someone has a better statistic, please let us know.
So basically, a conservative number would be, say, there's about 800,000 abortions a year. That's a conservative estimate, okay?
Which is way too many.
Which is a lot. Okay, so now when it comes to race, okay, which we always like to talk about race because everybody's so race obsessed in this country, as everybody is.
Racist against us, anyway.
Yeah, especially racist against white people, the biggest one. But anyway, it says basically 117,626 black children were killed by surgical abortion in 2018. These deaths, they call it deaths, account for 33.6% of all abortions are done by black people.
Yep,
33%, and they're only 13% of the population. Okay, so.
Well, to hold on to that, do you have more to reiterate on that, or?
I got a little bit more on that, but not on that specific thing. But why this happens?
Well, like for instance, like the facilitation of abortion in America disproportionately affects the black community, which I personally think that the left, what they do is they pretend that they want to help, but they really don't. Like you mentioned, like from what I found, 40% of all abortions in this country are black children. 40%.
Wow, that's a lot.
Which blacks they only constitute 12% of the population, and it's not a matter of like economic status or cultural differences. Did you study like Planned Parenthood? Margaret Sanger, the founder of Planned Parenthood, which she was a eugenist, like she believed in literally murdering babies.
Wow.
She believed that the most undesirable elements of society should not be allowed to procreate, and that includes blacks. Like black Americans, according to the Life Issue Institute, 86% of Planned Parenthood abortion facilities are located in black and Latino communities.
86%.
86%.
Did you ever see a Planned Parenthood in a nice community?
Exactly.
In a nice white community? You never
like
see it.
Rochester or West Bloomfield or something
Hills.
like the Bloomfield Hills. You'll never see them. But if you go to Detroit, you go to Flint, you go to Lansing, you'll find them.
So what's up with that? Why do you think that is?
Just like I said, because I believe that Margaret Sanger, I've heard a quote from her that she actually stated that she's seen black people as human weeds. She believed that.
Is she black or white herself?
She was white.
Oh, she's white. Wow.
Yeah, she was actually. Don't quote me. I guess it doesn't matter, but yeah, she's Caucasian.
Wow. So more information I have a little bit on basically race is that. About white people account for about 38.7% of the total abortion rate. Hispanics about 20%, and other about 7.7%. Now, just to go over to the resources that I used, because I don't want to get into any copyright type of things, is I use www.deseret.com. I use cnsnews.com, and I use Yahoo News. But now I've been going to kind of look at the left's view on this anti-abortion movement.
Should I cite my information?
Well, it's always good to it's always good to cite your information.
All right. Well, I get most of my information either from the Epic Times, from Target News, from Natural News. There's a couple other outlets.
There you go. Yeah, it's good. It's good to note your sources. Okay, so basically, I was looking at the left side of how the left views this anti-abortion. So I started looking at the other side.
Right.
And basically, they believe that the anti-abortion movement is rooted in white supremacy.
Of course.
Of course, it's white supremacy.
Everything's white supremacist. Even if white people didn't exist, it would be white supremacy.
Now, this is from Yahoo News. I'm going to give you this, in an interview with the griot, Representative Presley. You know Presley, the one with the bald head? The squad member with the bald head?
Yes.
Yeah, this is what she said.
Because she has alopecia or something.
Oh God, I don't know what it is, but that lady's crazy. She not only emphasized the statistics that black women are more likely than white women to experience health and economic disparities related to the lack of reproductive care, but she also reminded us that the history of anti-abortion movement is rooted in white supremacy. White supremacy. It's all it's got to do. Everything is white supremacy with these people. Every freaking thing.
Well, we've talked about this because anytime that, and I'm not just going after blacks, but touching on what Christopher just said. Instead of them looking at their own shortcomings, if they succeed, it's because they're strong, liberated black people. If they fail, it's because of whitey.
It's always white supremacy.
Always whitey.
White supremacy. Anyway,
it's a cop-out.
So basically, the reason why I think, so I've been studying critical theory and critical race, especially critical theory, because that's like the heart of it.
Right.
And it's hard to define because it's kind of ambiguous. You can't just give one definition of what critical theory is because it's so ambiguous.
Yeah, sure.
So basically the way, after my studies, because I got this book on like the terms and concept of critical theory, I got Max whatever the hell his name is, Horkheimer or whatever, the guy, the father of critical theory.
Yep.
And, Marx, of course, he started critical theory, So basically, my understanding of critical theory, which is what these people are indoctrinated with, is basically it's like they look at the world through a lens. It's basically this lens that they have. And I'll give you an example. Through my experience. I was a Muslim for 20 years, and I had this Muslim lens on life. I looked at everything through the Muslim perspective. I'll give you an example. Like, for example, it explains. I'm just using an example to kind of prove what critical theory is in this aspect. Is that in Islam, it teaches that specifically that Jesus was nothing but a prophet and messenger of God. He was just a creation, and he was born like any other human being. So what you'll do, since that's what you believe, when you read the Bible, for example, there's passages in the Bible that point to Jesus as only being a messenger and that the Father is greater than I. So what you're doing, so basically you have this preconceived notion before you even look at the text. So you believe that Jesus is nothing but a prophet, and anything that goes against that is wrong. So what you'll do is you have this notion that, Jesus is nothing but a prophet. Then you look for passages in the Bible that go coincide with that Jesus is just a prophet. So you'll say, the Jesus said the Father is greater than I. So that tells you right then that Jesus had to be a prophet because he said the Father is greater than I. So you look for things that correlate with your worldview, and anything that goes against your worldview, you cast to the side.
Right.
Does that make sense?
But I think that's everybody that has a brain or at least thinks about the world around them instead of just goes on autopilot.
So what I learned from this, I'm going to try to kind of correlate this with critical theory, is that when I was a Muslim, I looked at it with the lens. So basically, I looked at anything that coincide with my worldview, I would accept. Anything that went against my worldview, I would not accept. Okay. So when I started getting out of Islam, I started looking at the scriptures for what they are instead of looking for what I'm looking for. So I stopped having this preconceived notion of what I believe, and I started looking at what the text reads and what the intent of the author is and the intent of the legislator is instead of my intent. So I would interpret a text based upon what is the author trying to say and what is the intent of the author. So I would make deductions based upon what the evidence is for what it is and not my preconceived notion. Okay, does that make sense?
Yeah.
So what the Bible says that there was passages that said that Jesus was nothing but a prophet, but then there's also passages that show that he was more than just a prophet. Like he was able to forgive sins on earth. He forgave, he rose from the dead. He said before Abraham I am. He said all these statements that proved his divinity. That I looked at. So if I look at the deduction, there is statements that prove that said he's a prophet, and there's statements that there was more than a prophet. So you have to. So I accepted the text for what it is and stopped with that stupid preconceived notion.
Right. Well, the Bible, if you look at the Bible, it's a text that has many authors. I mean, there's parts of the Bible that contradict other parts of the Bible. So
what I'm trying to say is that basically the view that I had as a Muslim, when people is indoctrinated with critical theory, they have the same mentality. They believe 100% that that there's white supremacy, and then there's black people are put in the system where they're exploited by white people, and that's what they see all the time. So people like that who are people who are indoctrinated with critical theory, they're looking at everything through this lens that the white supremacy. They're trying to hold me down.
Right.
So they're already looking for things that they're looking for white supremacy. They're looking for it.
See, I think that's like a sickness. Like there's something wrong with your head when you look at that. I mean, I've listened to leftists literally say that everything's racist, everything's sexist, everything's xenophobic or homophobic. That is a ridiculous way to go through life. I think it's absurd.
That's why I gave up that theory. I started to see the problem is they're not looking at all the facts, and they're just taking the facts and making a deduction from the facts. They have this lens, this critical theory lens that they view everything, basically that the black people are being exploited, there's white supremacy, and that that's how they look at the world. That's all. They look for it, everything like I was looking at, as a Muslim, looking through that lens.
Right.
So to get out of this programming, this indoctrination, is to get out of looking at this lens and start looking at the lens of taking all the pertinent facts and making deductions and having a free mind instead of being indoctrinated with this lens. Does that make sense?
Oh, I couldn't agree more.
So that's what this people that are indoctrinated with critical theory have this problem. So they basically look at they look at everything in America is built on white supremacy. That's what they look at. Everything they're looking for white supremacy and everything, right? So that because they believe in this, they believe that they have to tear everything down because everything was built from white supremacy. That's why they're trying to tear everything down.
Right.
I'm going to give you an example.
That's what they're told, and that's what they believe, which is not true.
But they want to tear it down because they believe it. They're indoctrinated with
believe.
it. Yes. But we've made so much progress in race relations that they completely ignore.
We've talked about this before. There's no better place in the world to be black than in the Western world.
Exactly. So let's take one example. For example, they believe that the criminal justice system is rooted in white supremacy. Okay. So what did they do? They started overturning everything that supposedly affected black people. And I'll give you an example. So they believe in racial equity. So they stopped. Listen to what they did. So they supposedly tore down everything that they supposedly was racist. So they took down the 3 strikes and you're out. Remember the 3 strikes and you're out? Mm-hmm. Like you do 3 felonies and you're out for your life, which is very good policy. They stopped the minimum mandatory sentencing. So, for example, if you got caught with drugs, you have to do a minimum mandatory sentence because any type of crime that's like really hurting society, you're going to get a minimum mandatory sentence for that, no matter who you are. Let's say you're dealing drugs, you get 10 years, no matter who you are. That was a mandatory sentencing. They did away with that. They did away with sentence enhancements for gang affiliation. So if you were affiliated with a gang, you would get double the punishment because if you're a part of a gang, you're a threat to society. So they would double your punishment, which was a very effective way at stopping gang violence.
Yeah, I'm familiar with all of it.
They stopped policing hotspots. So basically, anywhere where there was a lot of crime going on, they would put a lot of police officers there because that's where the fire was. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. They stopped that. It was racist. Stop and frisk. They stopped that because it was racist.
Any kind of racial profiling is what you're getting at.
But think about stop and frisk. They say it's unconstitutional. But think about how many stop and frisk saves so much black lives that people don't even understand how many black lives were saved by stop and frisk. About 8 to 9,000 blacks are murdered every year by gun violence in criminal hotspots. 8 to 9,000 per year. Stop and frisk reduced that by almost 80%.
Yeah, I knew that.
So it's bull crap. And then they stopped the war on drugs because it was racist. They used to enforce loitering laws. You know what loitering laws are? So if you're in some place that you have no place to be, there's no reason for you to be. If you're at a place of business
and you're not buying anything, you're
essentially
loitering.
So basically, a lot of drug dealers loiter. So they just sit in one place and they deal their drugs. So if somebody's loitering, get the hell out of here. You have no reason to be here. You're not. This is a shop, so you can buy things. You're not here. You're not doing things like that. Oh, okay. So what I'm trying to say is the reason why I am talking about these is that I'm going to give you my example. It's still about abortion.
Okay.
I know this. So they stopped. Here's another thing they stopped. They're going after low-level violations. So basically, like if expired tag, expired plate, whatever, they would go after. That was they considered that to be racist, and they stopped that.
I didn't know that.
Yes. So you think about when
get me on
when
that.
cops go after low violations, it takes care of the big ones. Because you're going after the small ones, and people are going to be. It just takes care of the big ones automatically. Going after small ones.
It makes sense because if you're going after someone like that, you read into it, and there could be a laundry list of crimes that they're guilty of.
So then they stopped the pretrial release. Okay, so this is crazy. So this is what's really affecting us right now, and is because they stopped the pretrial. They enforced a pretrial release. So basically, if you were considered to be a dangerous felon, you would be held until trial because you're considered dangerous. So they started releasing people because they're not proven guilty yet, so they started releasing them back on the streets to commit more crimes. They changed the theft law we talked about in California, the $950 theft law code.
Yeah.
So what I'm trying to say to you is that they believe they're looking for everything is white supremacy, and they tore down and rebuilt. That's what they're trying to do. But they tore down all these supposed racist laws, and look at what's happened. Crime has gone out of control. So their stupid lens that they look after doesn't work. It doesn't work. This stupid white supremacy argument is bullcrap because crime has increased greatly because they tore all these things down, if that makes sense.
Well, these Marxists know that. They know that white supremacy is completely ridiculous.
So basically, okay, so the reason why, what I was saying is that the reason why I'm bringing this up is because they look at through the world through a lens of critical theory, and they're looking for white supremacy in everything, and you have to understand that they're stuck in this lens. And they're trying to tear down everything they think is rooted in white supremacy, but actually they're destroying the country by tearing everything down that works. That makes sense.
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
So the reason why I believe they hate the abortion ban is because it's going against the Marxist agenda. Okay, they hate it. What I came to realize is that they hate it the most because they want to destroy the white population. They want the white population to not have children anymore. That is their main agenda. I'll give you an example. Okay, according to Patrick Buchanan in his book called "The Death of the West." I'm going to say what he wrote. The prognosis is grim. Between 2000 and 2050, world population will grow by more than 3 billion to over 9 billion people. But this 50% increase in global population will come entirely in Asia, Africa, and Latin America, as 100 million people of European stock will vanish from the earth. They don't like it because their main goal is to stop white people from having kids, because they believe in this stupid critical lens that the white nuclear family is what's causing all the racism in the world. So they want to destroy the family. They want to destroy white people from breeding, for what they call breeding. And this increases... so the bottom line is... the reason why they hate this abortion ban is because this is going to stop their plans, because more white people are going to have babies.
Right. Well, see, what I personally think, and I could be wrong, there may be listeners that agree with me, I think what they're doing is when you lower the white population, because I think they're going to do it to everybody. They're going to do it to Africa. They're going to do it to Asia. I personally think that you're going to see a huge collapse in the human population, not just in whites. But what I think that they're doing is they're lowering the population of whites. We talked about this last time, because if you go into white countries and the population is low, they're not given any incentive for white people to have kids. What they do is they
Poland
bring in,
is though, and
there's a
Hungary
couple countries
Poland,
that are
yeah.
doing that, but they're not. Most of these countries are not given incentives. So what they're saying is they're encouraging women to run with this feminist narrative. They're encouraging men to stay single and not have kids. And then when the population drops, instead of them encouraging them to have kids, what they're doing is they're bringing in foreigners from other countries. This is
have nothing to do with the West.
That's personally what I think they're doing, is destroying the Western world. It's like Douglas Murray's book, War on the West. That's exactly what he's talking about, is what you do is you destroy the West, and we're the last front to stop communism.
We're the last ones. We're the only ones that are going to stand up to it.
Literally.
That's why they're trying to stop her from giving birth.
If you destroy the Western world, if you destroy the white man, they love to call us the slave owners and the racists, but we're the ones that created the freedoms in the first place. They always talk about, we've mentioned this multiple times, they always talk about white people, white men specifically, straight, hetero, Christian males were the ones that, there was slavery, but we're the ones that abolished slavery. We're the ones that gave everybody the freedoms and the world that they live in today, the modern world, the technology. Chris and I have talked about this many times. You throw us out, and they have complete control over everything. That is my personal take on it.
Absolutely. And the reason why I believe they're trying to stop us from having children, and this is the reason why I believe it, is because according to this book called The Return of Christendom by Turley, who is a PhD, he says, thus Longman concludes that this fertility discrepancy is leading to the emergence of a new society whose members will be disproportionately be descended from parents who rejected the social tendencies that once made childlessness and small families the norm. These values include adherence to tradition, patriarchal religion, and a strong identification with one's own folk and nation. So what causes people to want to have kids is adherence to tradition, adherence to patriarchal religion, and strong identification with one's own family and nation. Now, listen to this. This is the reason why I believe they're trying to do psychological warfare on us to stop us from having kids. Number one. So they say, for example, they say that American tradition is bad and is rooted in white supremacy, and white people only benefited because of black slavery, and white people are like oppressors, and if people feel that they're oppressors, this lowers their self-esteem, and it lowers their faith in their country because their country was supposedly built on white supremacy, right?
It's ridiculous.
This is what they're propagating,
yeah,
right?
It's just awful.
Now, they say Christianity is outdated and is rooted in white supremacy because Jesus was white, et cetera, okay?
and because it's literally the foundation of the West.
Now, they say that the nuclear family is basically the white, conservative, Christian nuclear family is basically what brings racism into the world. That's what they believe. And so what do? They say that the family is outdated, and they're bringing in serial fornication, sodomy, transgenderism, and all these isms, feminism, and all this stuff to destroy the nuclear family. Okay, so basically, now, and they call the country white supremacists. Now that I just gave you those four things, right? So remember what gives people the incentive to have children: adherence to tradition, which they destroy; adherence to patriarchal religion, which they destroy. They even say that the patriarchy shouldn't be done away with, right? Yeah. They even say that openly. Strong identification with one's own family and nation. So they destroy the family, they destroy the nation. So if you are, let's say, if you are psychologically damaged in those ways, in those four things, the likelihood of you not having kids is very low. You're not going to have kids because you don't have the strong identification to your country, to your family, to yourself, and all this stuff. They're purposely doing this to stop us from having kids, and it's working.
Well, I read a study the other night that literally correlates with what you're saying. They found that women that have, when they go and show interest in getting married, the women that have the least amount of partners have more successful marriages, and then the women that are more promiscuous and have 15, 20 partners by the time they get married, they're less likely for their marriage to survive, or less likely to even get married in the first place.
Well, that's why for years people have always wanted to marry a virgin, because they always wanted to have a pure virgin.
It's not only that, but
years,
biologically, like we've talked anthropologically, studying it for years, that they found that when women find a guy and they're only with that guy intimately, or only him and someone else, their marriage is going to be more successful because the woman isn't thinking outside of that box that they created. What she's thinking is, there isn't more alternatives for me. She's thinking more of I'm going to hold on to what I have. That's a very biological thing. Women are nesters. That's not a sexist thing to say. Biologically, it's true.
It's a biological fact. It's a biological reality.
Yeah, I mean, any man listening right now that has a woman living with them, they know exactly that. A woman comes into a house. You can walk into a house and you can tell if a woman lives there.
You can tell a woman doesn't live here.
Exactly. Exactly. When you walk into my house, it was just like you could tell that a woman didn't live there.
Yeah,
you could
for
tell
sure,
that it was
for
a
sure.
guy.
But anyway, I never had kids yet, and I do want to have kids in the future. I do feel that now. But if I study,
we both do.
Yeah, if I study my own life and the reasons why I didn't have kids, and I study what other people say, what I found is that a lot of people that don't have kids could actually, in my perspective, in my opinion, could probably become good fathers and good mothers. Because they're responsible and they're just good people. But what I've come to conclude is that they say, and like I said, that the reason why they don't want to have kids, well, the world's too evil, it's too volatile. We don't know what's going to happen in the future. I don't want to put my seed in a world like this. That's what they say.
You want to have a child, and then you teach that child, and then there's more goodness in the world. If you're a good person and actually have a good intention for having kids, what you're doing is you're putting more good into the world. Not putting them into the world is taking good out of the world.
See that, but that's what I had. I was brainwashed by this idea that the world is so bad.
We both were.
And a lot of people are like this, and that's just a fact. It's a fact. The bottom line is that if you don't have kids, you're denying your primary biological objective in this life, which is to reproduce. Yeah. That's your primary biological objective, is to reproduce. So if you deny that, you're denying what it means to be human. You really are.
Well, I agree, because it's that age-old saying, what is the root of happiness? What does it take to be happy? And I think it's kind of a simple thing. You want to survive, you want to find meaning in your life, and you want to have children to pass that on.
For sure. You want your family tradition to live on. Like your family
Your
morals,
name,
your legacy,
your
all that
blood.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's a
your
natural
children are your
thing.
progenies.
It's your natural biological objective in life, and if you deny that, you're denying your own humanity.
Yep, you're denying
And
yourself.
now let's go over to reason. The world is very volatile. Now I want you to think about this. We think that the world today is volatile, but imagine what our forefathers went through. Just in the past couple hundred years, we had 2 world wars where millions of people died. We had the Great Depression. We had the Holocaust. We had all these gruesome things that happened, and people still had kids. So the fact that you think that the world's too volatile for you to have kids, the truth is the world has always been volatile and always be volatile. It will never stop being non-volatile.
Well, we've talked. I think we talked about this the other day. I think we were talking about it the other day. That if you look at history, this is the most peaceful time in human history is right now. If you look, there was always someone warring with somebody or fighting over something. That's just human nature. We're extreme. It's kind of. I remember talking to someone about it. Like, hopefully, if there's intelligent life out there, that they're nothing like us, because they're going to come here and just kick our asses.
Yeah,
because that's all we're all about doing is kicking each other's teeth in.
Okay, so basically, this is why I believe abortion is wrong. I don't believe these stupid leftists call it a reproductive right, and I think that language in itself is highly biased and it's intellectually dishonest, and I think it's a bad words to use for abortion, because they say it's a reproductive right because it's just part of a reproductive system, and it's bullcrap. The truth is,
how is that a right? I don't mean to cut, but how is that a right? You know what I mean?
To right to kill your own child within your own womb.
Yeah.
Here's what I learned though. It's not their body. So these stupid leftists will say, "Well, this is my body and I have my choice." Well, the truth is that the life, when the life is conceived within the woman's womb,
somebody else's body.
Check this out. That independent life with what's in that woman's body has a different DNA structure than the mother and the father.
Absolutely.
I have to say biological mother and biological father. So that tells you right then and there, it's an independent entity from you because it has a different DNA structure than you do.
100%. Not to mention that everybody listening, every human being on the planet has a belly button. That belly button signifies that you grew inside of your mother's womb as a separate entity.
Exactly.
You are not part of that woman's body, your mother's body. You are not her kidneys or her heart or her brain or her liver. You are your own human being, and that is a ridiculous argument.
And the truth is that the child within a woman's womb is not a fetus or just basically, they're part of the reproductive system. It is a child in the early stages of development. That's what a child is within the womb. Okay? So the bottom line is that, that these people promote this culture that they say they basically promote this culture that life is disposable, like life is meaningless, it's disposable.
Well, nihilism.
It's nihilism. So the bottom line is, every human being is created in the image and likeness of God. That means that that doesn't mean that human beings are God. It means that human beings are more dignified than the animals because they have a rational nature, because God is more of a rational nature. Right. They have that rational nature. So every human being has value. And
intrinsic value,
and to believe that life is disposable is going against that God created in human beings in His image and likeness, which goes against Christian culture and Christian doctrine.
I love that you're talking about that because that's exactly where we are. And I actually wanted to touch on you talking about it being a separate entity. I wanted to touch on the trimesters real quickly. Like after the first trimester, within the first week to 12 weeks is the first trimester. By 10 weeks, a fetus has newly formed arms and legs. The heart is beating after 3 weeks, and there are brain waves within the brain after 6 weeks.
Wow. So independent brain waves.
Within the first trimester, you are literally your own separate entity. Killing a child after the first trimester, you could argue that even in the first trimester, it's evil.
Wow. Yeah, I can agree with you based on what you just told me.
Yeah, because I'm one of these people that I'm on the fence. I'll talk about it when it's my turn. But the first trimester is one argument, but there's a whole other argument when you start getting past that. And what I just read, it makes you kind of wonder, like, the first trimester is pretty sinister.
So what we can do, though, some things we can do to, that we can help to people not want to have not to want to have an abortion is basically, have increased access to birth control for people.
Yeah.
Make sure that people have health insurance, and make sure people are properly sexually educated. Have proper sexual education, not indoctrination, but actual sexual education. Like proper sexual education that you and me got in school when the times were not woke. You know what I'm saying? That helps people make good decisions in their sexual life.
Absolutely. Let's talk.
Not
you and
talks about gay marriage and all this bull crap.
Well, let's talk you and I. You and I don't have children, but obviously we've known women. So all you have to do is be smart and responsible.
So if we do those three things, we can make this. If we can build on those three things, we can make abortion unnecessary. So the more we educate, the more people have health insurance, people have access to birth control. It makes abortion unnecessary. So we just got to plug, put policies behind those things. But what we got to talk about is after they passed Roe versus Wade. They overturned it. All the violence that happened and went on, all the rioting, basically went across the country. That didn't get much news reporting. I saw Christians being beaten down. There was churches burned down. Pregnancy centers were burned down.
That's what I was just going to say.
The level, there was threats all across the country. How many people got prosecuted for all these threats?
Well, what were they writing on these buildings, these abortion buildings? They were spray painting. I may be paraphrasing. They were saying, if abortion isn't safe, neither are you.
That's crazy.
You're threatening them.
Yeah, it's threatening.
And
they basically threatened the justices. They came to their home, in front of their homes, and intimidating them in their homes.
That is insurrection right there.
That is insurrection, to go again to intimidate the judges in their homes,
to try and influence their decision on a extremely
through threats.
And
intimidation.
Well, by definition, that's terrorism.
It is. It's
to have political motivation. That's the definition.
To use violence for political motivation is terrorism, especially by a non-state actor. Is terrorism by definition.
Yeah.
So it's crazy, but that's what I have for abortion for Roe versus Wade.
Yeah. First I wanted to talk about it. It doesn't matter if you're coming from a religious perspective or an ethical one, whether you agree or disagree with the decision overturning Roe versus Wade. I think it was the right legal decision. Would you agree?
I think it was great. I think it was great. I think that it's going to cause people to have a different thinking, and I think people are going to become more spiritual and more religious because of this.
Yeah. See, and Chris always says to me that he's more the religious, I'm more that he calls me the rational. I think we're both pretty rational guys. I don't think we would be doing this if we weren't, but if you look at the Constitution, the word abortion does not exist within the Constitution.
But the Second Amendment exists.
Absolutely. But one thing that people are not talking about, which I find so interesting, is that the job of the Supreme Court justices is to determine if a law is constitutional. It is not their jobs to make the laws. So if you look at Roe versus Wade, it was not written by the legislative branch of our government, which we have three branches of government for a reason. What happened is they pushed this executive order in the judicial part of the system, which is kind of interesting because if you are not writing a law, the way that our government works is legislation writes the laws, the executive passes the law, signs it into law, and then they bring it to the Supreme Court so the Supreme Court can determine.
Well, no, the Supreme Court has the discretion to basically they have the discretion to choose whatever they want to review or not.
But the point is they look at it and see if it's constitutional.
Yes, if they want to.
That is literally if they want to, but that is literally their job.
Yep, absolutely.
And
judicial review.
In Roe versus Wade, what they did is they gave the authority to write into law something that was never constitutional in the first place. So I don't know why people are so upset with this. So if you look at the decision that the Supreme Court made, it was the proper one. To send the issue of abortion back to the states, for our state elective government and representation to make the laws and policies based on what we people want. Isn't that an interesting concept that It trickles down to state legislation, and then we, as the people of each individual state, determine if we want abortion illegal.
I think
in
that's
our
great.
state. Well, that we don't live in a democracy. We live in a constitutional republic. But this is the cornerstone of our society: is we, the people, make the decision, not 9 Supreme Court justices. It should have never been up to them in the first place. So people should be proud of what happened, because Roe versus Wade was never legit to begin with.
They're not proud because it doesn't fit their Marxist agenda. That's the problem.
Well,
issue.
this goes back to what you were just saying.
Absolutely.
But if you look at it, like I said, it's the bedrock of our constitutional republic. Any decision in our country should be made democratically. We should have the voice to say yay or nay. We want it or we don't want it. What's good for Michigan isn't necessarily what's good for Minnesota, and so on and so on. And that's the way that it should be. What irritates me about this whole thing with abortion is women are using this argument that their freedoms are being taken away. I mean, being able to murder your children is freedom?
I don't see how that's freedom.
How is that freedom? How is the argument that abortion is freedom? No one is taking your rights away from you. It's as ridiculous as like we were talking about, the body autonomy argument. It's like my body, my choice. Well, the baby growing inside of you is a separate entity.
It's a separate entity. It's
a
child developing in your womb that God created, that you did not create yourself.
Exactly. I have a hard time wrapping my head around people's arguments, because it's more of a subjectively charged argument than it is a rational objective. The medical procedure that allows women to terminate unwanted pregnancies, it's not freedom. And your freedoms are not being taken away. Women are still as free as they wish. The problem with it is you no longer are free of your own consequences. That's what bothers me so much about this, that every action has its reaction. Women have the freedom to move to a state that agrees with baby execution, or freedom to exercise their decision making and to be responsible with their actions. See, these left-wing policies that reward bad behavior and lack of responsibility, that irritates me. To say that your freedoms are being taken away because you are actually held responsible for your own actions. Like women are saying, oh, well, I'm going to go on a sex strike. You always had that.
Goodness gracious.
I mean, you always had that. I mean, what are you doing saying that I'm no longer going to have sex? Well, you could have been doing that in the first place, and then you would never gotten pregnant in the first place.
Yeah.
It's this lack of, I don't know, moral integrity, I guess I would say, because like there's a freedom of choice, but individuals are not free from their bad decisions. They are free to not make these bad decisions, but when you make a bad decision, you are no longer free of that.
You have to face the consequences of your bad decisions.
That is the point.
That's part of freedom.
That is the point of living in a law-abiding state, federal state, country, whatever. You don't just do whatever you want.
I just took a course on natural law, and just because, like, for example, if natural law is something that exists, no matter whether or not human beings make a law or don't make a law, there's certain laws of the universe that exist. So let's say, for example, they legalize homosexuality. Well, if you commit homosexuality, you're basically, you're violating natural law. And even though it's legal on the books, you're still going to have to face the consequences from the sin that you created, that you did. For example, the digression of traditional marriage, all these different natural law consequences of your behavior that you're going to have to deal with because you broke that natural law, even though it's supposedly legal. Just because it's legal doesn't mean that it's that natural law coincides with that.
Right.
There's human law and there's natural law, which is basically God's God's law, the nature's law, and then there's human law. if you break human law, well, you're going to face the human law consequences. If you break natural law, you're going to break the universe's you're going to break the universe's laws. And you're going to deal with those consequences. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So you're going to, no matter what, you're going to have to deal with those consequences of this behavior. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So if you have an abortion, you're going to have to deal with those consequences. Now, you just told me a couple minutes ago that people that commit abortion, they have depression, suicide, and all this stuff.
Yeah. From what I was reading, it was a few studies out of Finland. I didn't cite. I should start citing all the information. I just write it down or put it in my phone or whatever. But they did a few studies out of Finland, and they showed that women that had abortions are 7 times more likely to commit suicide than women that gave birth.
Wow.
Think about that. 7 times.
Because they're killing they're no matter what they believe, they're still killing their own progeny. I can't say that right.
Progeny. Yeah.
Yeah, they're killing their own. They're going against their own biological imperative, which is to reproduce, and they're killing that child within their womb. Of course, that's going to have consequences on their soul, on their brain, on their bodies, their emotional and spiritual levels. Like it's going to have a toll. Right?
Well, this is one thing that women totally have on us men that we men will never understand. We men and these lefty freaks can say all they want about men getting pregnant. We can't get pregnant. One thing that women have on us that we men will never understand is what it's like to be pregnant and have this child grow inside of you. So for you to make this conscious decision to abort that, I could not imagine the emotional toll that it would take on you.
I'm sure a huge.
You know what I mean?
Toll.
Because yeah. I would be if I had a lover and she got pregnant and she terminated our child, I'd be devastated over it. I can't imagine what she would go through.
Exactly. So they can lie to themselves all day long. It's still going to have consequences on them when they have an abortion.
Absolutely.
For sure.
According to the researcher and other researchers that I found, David C. Reardon, 60% of women who had an abortion had experienced suicidal feelings.
60%.
60% of his subjects. That's a huge number. And of the women that he interviewed, 28% had attempted suicide.
28%.
So among all of his test subjects, 1/3 of the women that he interviewed had attempted suicide. And among teenagers, it's worse. Teenage girls who have had an abortion are 10 times more likely to commit suicide than girls who actually either had the child or never had to deal with abortion to begin with.
Wow.
10
Those are
times.
Staggering statistics.
Yeah, which of course the left does not want you to know. Because they claim that they care about women, they care about women's health. They don't. They want you to kill your children. It would be even better if you killed yourself. And if you're a crazy lefty, you could kill yourself and call it social justice.
Social justice.
I mean, I'm kidding around.
Social
but,
justice. That's the word. Racial justice.
Exactly. But like I said, these radical pro-choice advocates, they don't want you to know these. They don't want you to know these facts. They're not going to broadcast these statistics. Any fool that tells you that abortion saves lives is completely backwards. Abortion always kills the child, and sometimes it kills the mother as well.
It is what it is. It's the ugly truth.
Yeah, it's in the truth. When it comes to the subject that we're talking about, it's a very ugly truth. And telling men that we're not allowed to talk about it is preposterous. We men...
You're a misogynist for talking about it. You're a misogynist.
Right. Wait, I'm trying to promote instill the survival of the patriarchy. No, we men are born just like women are. I mean, literally, like, we men have just as much to do with pregnancy as women do. Women just carry the child to term. We men are the ones that determine sex of the child. It's not the mother, it's the father. Men are just as responsible of creating that life as women are. Women love to say, I created life, no more than the man did.
Yeah.
And then telling us that I can abort your child, I can force you to pay for this child for the next 18 years, or I could put your child up for adoption and you have nothing that you can do about it. That's
when I lived in Arizona, I was shopping and it was next to a Planned Parenthood, whatever, abortion clinic, and there was a lot of drama that goes in front of that abortion clinic between males and females. So there's this female that was going to the abortion clinic, and there was a guy that was basically threatening her and all this stuff because she was about to get an abortion, and the man didn't want her to get an abortion because that was his child.
Right.
But I myself protected the woman because it was I saw a man, basically attacking a woman. I couldn't stand and let a woman be attacked by another man. I couldn't do it, regardless of the circumstances.
I remember you telling me about
So I
this.
stepped in, and I protected the woman and to make sure that she was fine, that she wouldn't be attacked by this male. But in reality, he was just trying to stop her from aborting their child.
Right.
And it sounds disgusting. I understand where he's coming from, but I just couldn't allow a man to do that to a woman in public. I couldn't do it.
Right.
I couldn't do it.
Right.
But I understand. But you see what I'm saying? The emotions are there, just like you said. That guy's emotions there. He didn't want his child to be aborted. He felt the pain, as you could see that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Oh, I would.
Yeah.
There's no doubt that I would, especially now. Maybe when I was younger, and when I was agnostic and I didn't really care. I didn't see life the way that I do now. I may be, because I've certainly gone more pro-life than I am pro-choice. I'm still kind of on the fence. I understand. I can be rational about it. I can see both sides of the argument, certainly. But saying, like I said before, saying that it's not murder is completely ridiculous.
But I think it's good because, like we said, we went over the statistics that the white people are dying off. And the fact is that this was going to help increase population of Americans. And it's going to help, to continue the country, the great legacy of the country,
Right.
by having more children. I'm all for
Right.
that. I'm glad that this happened. I'm
Right.
glad.
Yeah,
But-
I mean, like the people that are out there saying that America is basically going backwards and stripping women's rights away. I have statistics on, like, say, Europe. Like, nearly every single European country is more restrictive on abortion than the United States.
Wow.
Most countries in Europe make abortion illegal between 11 and 20 weeks. There actually are a few European countries that abortion is actually illegal.
Wow.
But they act like in the Western world that we are so progressive when it comes to this sort of thing, and in the West actually isn't. The West actually cares about the life of this child. That, like we were saying, it has meaning. That when the child is conceived, it's a human being. Like I remember seeing this, that, not to digress, but seeing when these women were during these Roe versus Wade marches, these pro-abortion marches, this woman was pregnant. She had written on her belly, "Not a human being yet."
Wow.
I mean, you're pregnant, and this is what you're writing on your stomach, is you don't believe that it's an actual human being. And what I found so interesting about these statistics in Europe is that there are only seven. There are 59 countries that allow abortion. Basically, I wouldn't say to the fullest extent, but they're pushing it in between, as I said, like 20 weeks, so into the second trimester. So there are only 7 of 59 of these countries that allow elective abortions after 20 weeks. So this is, I didn't write that down. I don't know if that's into the third trimester. It's either in the second or into the third. I'm sure.
Gotcha.
I'm sure people listening would know. I'm not exactly sure, but they found that there are 7 countries that allow abortion after 20 weeks. Now listen to these countries: Canada, China, the Netherlands, North Korea, Singapore, the United States, and Vietnam. So abortion has become so extreme in the United States that we are in par with communist countries like North Korea,
Wow.
Vietnam, and China. These countries have no regard for human life.
They don't. Communist countries have no regard for human life.
Yeah. I mean, these statistics demonstrate that Roe versus Wade was extreme and an outlier, and the radical left in America has been putting in a lot of activist effort to take it to even more extremes. I mean, like California trying to pass that law to where the child can be born and you have 28 days to terminate the child.
That is fucking. I'm sorry. That is disgusting.
I mean, everybody should be cursing. That is horrible. And then when you read statistics on how America feels about abortion, the left loves to say that 70% of America agrees with abortion. That is a flat out lie. If you look at statistics, there's about a 60% support of abortion in the first trimester, but then that drops off more than half to 28% after that. That's a huge shift. So you have 60% of Americans that agree with abortion after around the first trimester, but after that, it drops down to 28%.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's staggering.
So the left, they throw tantrums over this debate, and the debate is absurd. It's
the left,
it's
they're
unfounded.
Liars. You know, they're just bold-faced liars.
Yeah, it's what they're doing is they're acting like they're self-righteous, but in reality, they're just selfish. They all they care about is themselves and doing whatever they want, like we said, without consequences.
Absolutely. So in essence, the belief is that the stupid left calls it the reproductive right, and they think it's their body to do what they want of it. But the truth is that baby has a different DNA structure than the biological mother and the biological father. Therefore, it's a separate entity. It's not a reproductive right. It's a child. It's a separate child being developed in your womb, and to murder this child that has a independent DNA structure than you and the biological father is murder. Period. And we in America are a Christian country, and that means that everybody is born in the image and likeness of God. Therefore, every human being has intrinsic value. So when a child is in the womb developing, that child has intrinsic value, and to murder that goes against all good morals and ethics and Christian ethics. It's a violation. It's murder. It's terrible. And these leftists are disgusting people. Period.
Well, if you've ever seen videos on how they conduct abortions, it's disgusting. It is literally, it's horrific. It's worse than watching a horror film.
It is disgusting. And the fact that they overturned this is a good thing, and I hope that we're going to have a better country because of this. Right.
I basically have one more thing to say. Okay, the left, they love to point the finger at everybody. They over this Roe versus Wade thing. They want to blame the Supreme Court. They want to blame us conservatives. They want to blame Christians. They want to blame pro-lifers. But in reality, they should be blaming themselves. When they want to take things to the extreme, and I'm talking the extreme, like we just talked about, the 28 days after birth, they have to start looking at themselves. See, what we did is we were understanding, we say, okay, the first trimester, but what these radicals did is they pushed it. We went from being legal but rare to let's murder the baby as it's coming out of a woman.
That is disgusting.
Literally. I mean, that is what happened to Roe versus Wade. You went from literally we gave an inch and you took 10 miles from us.
There you go.
It's their fault, not ours.
And you know, Justice Clarence Thomas, the justice, the black justice that helped overturn this.
Of course.
The amount of racism
it's
that
awful.
this guy suffered from the left.
Oh yeah.
From the left.
They're all calling him coon and whatever.
And like, Uncle Clarence, dude. I mean, the amount of racism that this guy got from the left shows you exactly who the left is. They are the true racists. The left is the true racist. Just look at the stuff they said about Justice Clarence Thomas, and you'll find that they are the absolute true racists, not the right. So anyway, that concludes our discussion about the abortion. Now we're going to get into gay marriage.
Gay marriage.
All right. We'll see you then.